Michael Patterson sat alone in the corner booth of the Golden Star Diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Outside, snow fell gently on Christmas Eve, and the streets of downtown were nearly empty. Most people were home with their families, where they belonged, but Michael had nowhere to go. At 57, he had everything money could buy and nothing that truly mattered. His salt and pepper hair was impeccably styled, and his tailored black suit probably cost more than most people made in a month. Patterson Industries was a household name. His tech innovations had changed the world, and his net worth was measured in billions. But none of that could fill the emptiness that had consumed him since his wife, Sarah, died 3 years ago. They'd never had children. Sarah couldn't, and they'd talked about adoption. But somehow the years had slipped away, consumed by business deals and travel and the relentless pursuit of success. And now Sarah was gone, and Michael was utterly alone. He'd sent his household staff home for the holiday. His brother's family had invited him to their celebration in Colorado, but Michael had declined. He couldn't bear the thought of being surrounded by happy families, of watching children open presents while he sat there, a reminder of all he'd lost and never had. So instead, he sat in a diner on Christmas Eve, watching the world go by through the window. The place was nearly empty, decorated with slightly worn garlands and a small artificial tree in the corner. It was a far cry from the lavish holiday parties he usually attended. And somehow that felt right. He didn't deserve joy. He didn't deserve celebration. The bell above the door chimed, and Michael glanced up out of habit. A young woman entered, shaking snow from her blonde hair. She wore a cream-colored coat that had seen better days, with visible tears and patches. Behind her came a little girl, perhaps 6 or 7, with the same blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. The child wore a green sweater that looked hand-knit and sturdy boots. The woman's face was drawn and tired, with worry lines that seemed too deep for someone who couldn't have been more than 30. But when she looked at her daughter, her expression softened with unmistakable love. They slid into a booth across the diner from Michael, and he watched as the woman pulled out a small purse and carefully counted coins. The little girl sat quietly, her eyes taking in the diner's Christmas decorations with wonder. The waitress, a motherly woman named Betty who'd been kind to Michael during his solitary meal, approached their table. Michael couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw the woman point to the menu, then say something while gesturing to her daughter. Betty nodded and walked away. A few minutes later, Betty returned with a single plate of pancakes, a glass of milk for the child, and a cup of water for the mother. Michael watched as the woman cut the pancakes carefully and placed the plate in front of her daughter. "Eat up, sweetheart," he heard her say softly. "But Mommy, what about you?" the little girl asked, her voice carrying across the quiet diner. "I already ate, baby. This is all for you." It was a lie, and Michael knew it. He'd watched the woman count her coins. She'd had just enough for one meal, and she'd given it to her child. The little girl looked uncertain, but she picked up her fork and began to eat. The woman watched her with such tender devotion that Michael felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time someone had looked at him like that? When was the last time he'd mattered to anyone beyond what his money could do for them? He signaled Betty over to his booth. "That woman and child," he said quietly, nodding toward them. "I'd like to pay for their meal. And I'd like you to bring the mother a full dinner as well. The best thing on your menu. Don't tell them it's from me." Betty smiled warmly. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Patterson. I'll take care of it." A few minutes later, Betty appeared at the woman's table with a steaming plate of roast turkey, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and fresh bread. "The gentleman over there wanted you to have this," Betty said, gesturing toward Michael before he could stop her. The woman's eyes widened, and she looked over at Michael with an expression of shock and gratitude. "I can't accept that," she said, but her voice wavered. "I don't have enough money to." "It's already paid for," Betty said firmly, "and it would be a shame to let it go to waste. Merry Christmas." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Michael again, and he saw her mouth the words, "Thank you." He nodded awkwardly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. It was such a small thing. Why did it feel so significant? The woman ate slowly, savoring every bite, and Michael found himself unable to look away. There was something about her, about them, that pulled at him. The little girl chattered happily between bites, and occasionally the mother would smile, though the worry never quite left her eyes. When they finished eating, the woman carefully gathered their things and approached Michael's booth. Up close, he could see that she was even younger than he'd thought, with delicate features and eyes the color of honey. The little girl held her hand tightly. "I'm sorry to intrude," the woman said, her voice soft and slightly rough, as if she'd been crying recently. "I just wanted to thank you properly. That was incredibly kind. You have no idea what it meant to us." "It was nothing," Michael said, and realized how dismissive that sounded. "I mean, I'm glad I could help. It's Christmas Eve. No one should go hungry." "I'm Claire," the woman said, "and this is my daughter, Lily." "Hello," Lily said shyly, then added, "You're sitting all alone. Don't you have family?" "Lily," Claire said, embarrassed. But Michael found himself answering honestly, "No, I don't, not anymore." Lily's face fell. "That's sad. Everyone should have family at Christmas." Claire touched her daughter's shoulder gently. "We should let this gentleman enjoy his evening. Thank you again, Mr. Patterson, Michael Patterson." And actually, he surprised himself by continuing, "If you don't mind my asking, where are you headed tonight? Forgive me for being presumptuous, but you look like you might need help." Claire's face flushed, and she looked down. "We're fine. We have a place to stay." It was another lie, Michael realized. He recognized it because he'd become so good at spotting lies over the years in business. "Please," he said gently, "I don't mean to pry, but it's Christmas Eve, and it's freezing outside. If you need help, I have the means to provide it." Claire's composure cracked, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Lily pressed close to her mother's side, looking frightened. "I'm sorry," Claire whispered. "I'm trying so hard to hold it together. But it's been such a difficult year." "Please, sit down," Michael said, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. "You don't have to tell me anything. But if you want to talk, I'm a good listener." Claire hesitated, then slid into the booth, pulling Lily in beside her. For a moment, she just sat there, struggling to compose herself. Then the words came tumbling out. "I lost my husband 11 months ago. Daniel. He had a heart attack. He was only 32. We didn't have much life insurance, and I've been trying to keep us afloat. But I lost my job 3 weeks ago when the company downsized. I've been looking for work. But it's Christmas, and no one's hiring right now. We lost our apartment 5 days ago because I couldn't make rent. We've been staying in my car, but it broke down this morning, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I spent our last money on gas to run the heat. And when that ran out, we came here because I knew at least I could get Lily one warm meal." She covered her face with her hands. "I'm a terrible mother. My baby is sleeping in a car. On Christmas Eve." Michael felt his heart breaking. Here was this woman, clearly doing everything in her power to care for her child, believing she was failing. And here he sat, with more money than he could ever spend, utterly useless in his grief and self-pity. "You're not a terrible mother," he said firmly. "You're doing everything you can in an impossible situation. And you know what? Tonight, that changes." Claire looked up at him, confused. Michael pulled out his phone and made a call. "Robert, I know it's Christmas Eve, but I need you to book a suite at the Grandview Hotel. 2 rooms. Put it under Claire." He looked at her questioningly. "Morrison," she whispered. "Claire Morrison. Indefinite stay. Charge it to my personal account." He paused. "Also, I need you to get me the number for Sandra Chen." "Yes, I know it's late. It's important." He ended the call and looked at Claire, who was staring at him in disbelief. "The hotel will be ready in half an hour. You and Lily will have a warm place to stay for as long as you need. Tomorrow is Christmas, so we'll let you rest and celebrate the day. But the day after, I'd like you to meet with Sandra Chen. She's the Director of Human Resources at Patterson Industries. We can find a position for you." "I don't understand," Claire said, shaking her head. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Michael was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. Finally, he said, "My wife Sarah died 3 years ago. We never had children. For 3 years, I've been going through the motions. Building my company bigger and bigger. Making more money. But none of it means anything. Tonight, I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself. Drowning in my own loneliness. And then I watched you give your daughter the only meal you could afford. I watched you lie to her so she wouldn't feel guilty for eating. I watched you show more love and selflessness in 5 minutes than I've shown in 3 years. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? Claire asked softly. That love is what matters. Not money, not success. Love. You have so little, but you're so rich. And I have everything, but I'm bankrupt in the ways that count. He smiled sadly. So maybe you're not the only one being helped tonight. Maybe I need this as much as you do. Maybe more. Lily, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. Are you lonely? Lily, Claire said again, but Michael held up his hand. Yes, he told the little girl honestly. I'm very lonely. Lily thought about this seriously. Then said, you could spend Christmas with us. Mommy always says Christmas is better when you share it. Michael looked at Claire, who had tears streaming down her face again. She's right, Claire said. If you'd like to join us, we'd be honored. And so, on Christmas Eve, Michael Patterson found himself doing something he never would have imagined. After getting Claire and Lily settled into their hotel suite, he returned with bags of Chinese takeout from the only restaurant open late. Along with a small Christmas tree he'd convinced a street vendor to sell him and a few wrapped presents he'd frantically purchased from a 24-hour drugstore. They decorated the tree together in the hotel suite, Lily's eyes shining with wonder. They ate their Chinese food picnic style on the floor. And as midnight approached, Michael sat on the couch with Lily falling asleep against his shoulder while Claire hummed a soft Christmas carol. Thank you, Claire said quietly. You've given us more than a room and a job. You've given us hope. Michael looked down at the sleeping child, so peaceful and trusting, and felt something shift inside him. For the first time in 3 years, the crushing loneliness had lifted. He felt alive again. He felt needed. I think you've given me something too, he said. I think you've reminded me why life is worth living. The months that followed were transformative for all of them. Claire started working at Patterson Industries in the marketing department, where her creativity and dedication quickly made her invaluable. Michael set her up with a comfortable apartment and helped her get a reliable car. But more than the material help, he became part of their lives. He attended Lily's school plays and helped her with homework. He took them to museums and parks and baseball games. He taught Lily to ride a bike and was there when she lost her first tooth. When Claire's car broke down, he was the one she called. When Lily had nightmares about losing her mother the way she'd lost her father, Michael was there to reassure her that Claire was healthy and safe. Somewhere along the way, without anyone quite noticing when it happened, they became a family, not in the traditional sense, perhaps, but in all the ways that truly mattered. Claire and Michael grew closer, bonded first by gratitude and circumstance, but gradually by something deeper. They had long conversations late at night about life and loss and hope. They laughed together. They grieved together. Michael for Sarah and Claire for Daniel, helping each other heal. One evening, nearly a year after that Christmas Eve, Michael took Claire and Lily to dinner at a nice restaurant. Lily was chattering about her upcoming birthday party, and Claire was laughing at her daughter's enthusiasm. And Michael looked at them both and felt overwhelmed with love. After dinner, as they walked through the park, Lily ran ahead to look at a fountain. Michael took Claire's hand, stopping her. I need to tell you something, he said. Claire looked up at him, her honey-colored eyes warm. What is it? A year ago, I was the most successful, most miserable man in the world. I had everything except a reason to get up in the morning. And then I met you and Lily, and everything changed. You didn't just let me help you. You helped me. You both did. You gave me back my life. Michael, Claire started, but he continued. I'm not saying this because I expect anything in return. I just need you to know how much you mean to me. How much you both mean to me. I love you, Claire, and I love Lily like she was my own daughter. You've made me want to live again. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Do you know what Lily told me last week? She asked softly. Michael shook his head. She said she wished you could be her daddy. Not instead of Daniel. She's very clear about that. But in addition to, she said she has 2 daddies now. One in heaven and one here. And that makes her extra lucky. Michael felt tears sting his own eyes. What did you tell her? I told her that love doesn't work like math. You can't add it up or divide it. Love just grows to fill whatever space it needs. And that she's absolutely right. She's very lucky. We both are. Does that mean? Claire reached up and touched his face. It means I love you too. It means I think Sarah would be happy that you found happiness again. And it means, if you want to be part of this family officially, we'd like that very much. Michael pulled her close, holding her as if she might disappear. I want that more than anything in the world. They were married the following spring in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Lily was the flower girl, beaming in her white dress. Michael's brother gave a toast about how love could heal even the deepest wounds. Claire's mother cried happy tears. But the moment that mattered most came at the end of the ceremony. When Michael knelt down in front of Lily. I want to ask you something important, he said. Lily looked at him solemnly. Okay. Your mom and I just got married, which means we're officially a family now. But I wanted to ask you if it would be okay if I adopted you. If you'd let me be your dad, legally and forever. You'll always have your first daddy in your heart. And that's exactly how it should be. But if you'd let me, I'd like to be your dad too. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Yes, yes, I want that. Michael held her tight, this precious child who had helped save him from his loneliness and despair. I promise I'll do my best to make you proud, he whispered. You already do, Lily said simply. Years later, Michael would look back on that Christmas Eve in the diner as the night his life truly began. Not when he made his first million. Not when his company went public. Not when Forbes put him on their cover. But the night he saw a struggling mother give everything she had to her child. And chose to help. That one act of kindness, inspired by witnessing selfless love, had blossomed into a whole new life. He had a wife he adored, a daughter he cherished, and a sense of purpose that no amount of business success could provide. He never forgot what it felt like to be alone on Christmas Eve. And he made sure no one else at his company had to experience that feeling. He started programs for employees in crisis, established emergency funds for those facing hardship, and made Patterson Industries known not just for innovation but for compassion. And every Christmas Eve, the Patterson family returned to the Golden Star Diner for pancakes. Betty still worked there, and she always greeted them with a warm hug. They'd sit in the same booth where Michael had sat alone all those years ago. And they'd talk about how much had changed. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't come into that diner that night? Claire asked one Christmas Eve when Lily was 15. All the time, Michael admitted, and I'm grateful every single day that you did. Lily, now a thoughtful teenager who'd inherited her mother's kindness and Michael's business acumen, smiled at them both. Mom always says God puts people in our path for a reason. She's right, Michael said, reaching across the table to take both their hands. I thought I was alone. But I wasn't. I was just waiting for you to find me. And that, he would tell anyone who asked, was the real Christmas miracle. Not the money he'd given or the help he'd provided. Though those things mattered, the real miracle was learning that it's never too late to find family. That love has no limits. And that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes in the form of a struggling mother and her child. Sitting in a diner on Christmas Eve, reminding you what truly matters. Sometimes it comes when you open your heart to others and discover that in helping them, they help you even more. Love, Michael had learned, was the greatest gift of all. And it was a gift that kept giving, growing, multiplying with every passing year. He had everything now, not because of his money or success, but because he had people to share it with. People who loved him not for what he had, but for who he was. And on quiet Christmas Eves, sitting in that old diner with his family, Michael would look around and think about all the people out there feeling alone, feeling lost, and he'd say a quiet prayer that they, too, would find what he'd found, hope, love, and the understanding that no one is ever truly alone as long as there's kindness in the world.